So we will move on to floor amendment number 2, and this is Councilor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to move floor amendment number 2 on page 3, line 15, remove the word main. This is simply to say that although I believe there are likely many things that need to be renovated, upgraded, and changed at the main station, there are also different substations throughout all of our city that are becoming more and more dilapidated and need some help. So I would like to have some flexibility in how this $5 million is utilized in making sure that we can repair the existing buildings and properties we do have with APD.
Is there a second? There's a second from Councilor Davis. Are there any questions? Well,
I'm sorry, mine was actually for a question. I'm not sure it was for a second.
Oh, yours was not a second, Councilor?
I'll second it.
Councilor Jones is offering a second, so Councilor Davis, go ahead.
Thank you, and I'm likely to support it. I just wanted to ask the sponsor a brief question, Madam President. For the sponsor or for staff, just to clarify, if we remove the word main, it would allow, I agree, it would allow it to be for all APD facilities, but the administration will still have the flexibility to use it where they see fit, and if they chose to all put it into one facility, say the main, they could still do that. Are you satisfied that this is okay for that flexibility?
So, Madam President, Councilor Davis, in the description, it says funds for APD stations will be used based on need. I am hoping, I know that's the key phrase there. I'm happy to add something in that says something more, but I am hoping that the administration will recognize that, I know that my area commands need some work. I've talked to some other counselors who have area commands that need some work. And I think that when we have parts of the building falling apart, that maybe we can look into fixing that too, instead of just doing one building.
Thank you, Madam President. I intend to support the legislation, but I just want to be sure that there's a process to figure out what our priorities are, and maybe not all in one. Thank you.
Any other questions of councilors? Not?
Madam President, if I could, I'm sorry, I didn't get my trigger finger ready quick enough, but I would ask the sponsor, I mean, could we add some language of direction in this, or is that inappropriate in here? Does that have to be done in another way to ensure that that something is proposed and then reported back to the council? Could that be enrolled into this if the sponsor was amenable?
Madam President, Councilor Benton, I would be completely happy doing so and creating some formal language saying APD stations and funding for it would be used based on need if council staff agrees that that is doable.
Madam President and councilors, the council is able to insert any kind of designation or direction language into this bill that it sees fit.
So,
yeah, that's just a friendly offer, and I'll conclude. Sorry to bother you.
So, Madam President, Councilor Benton, what about if we were to say remove the word main, and then somewhere in there, however staff works their fluid magic on it, say making sure APD stations would receive renovations based on need, and perhaps saying there should be a communication drop down to the council or something for communication with us so that we are aware of what is planned to be.
Councilor, may I suggest that wouldn't that already be inherent in their yearly reporting? I mean, is it necessary that they would have to give us a special report? I mean, we get bi-yearly reports, during budget and during cleanup. We can ask any question we'd like. So is it really necessary to add that language?
Madam President, I think that
we want to be transparent. We are being transparent because they are offering yearly reports.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, I believe that probably the intention behind this is sometimes it seems, tend to hear about the intentions or the plans that are already happening after they're already happening. Whereas if we were to be included in the loop beforehand, perhaps we can have a little bit more oversight on the checks and balances between the funding that's going to be spent and how it's going to be spent, as is our duty by being the legislative branch.
So what was the language that you were suggesting, Counselor?
Madam President, it would be to include and add in there that funds for APD stations would be used based on need and communicated to the council prior to the work being done. And maybe if Ms. Yara can make it sound even better, that would be great, but that's where I'm going with it.
Ms. Yara? I see Counselor Benton and Counselor Jones. Do you have language to offer, Counselors?
Yeah, Madam President and Councilors, I would maybe suggest that on page 3, under that line 15, we would insert the language, of course, change it to remove the word main from the title. And after that line, I suggest saying something like, the police department shall provide quarterly reports of the priority needs of APD stations and their plans for the use of this funding for these upgrades. Something like that, a quarterly report. Does that do?
Would that be based on council districts? Because
I think the intent is based on need, so I defer to this.
Okay.
I don't think it would be wise to do it based off of district. I think that there are certain substations that have more need than others. And so I don't think that would already be setting this up for success. But whatever we do, I don't know if quarterly reports is even worthwhile, so much as maybe the work to be done at any of these stations based off of need is subject to council approval.
Ms. Yara, can you amend that language to just not quarterly reports, but based on need?
Yeah, so I guess I would then read under line 15, we would insert the language, improvements shall be done after the department receives approval from the city council for specific projects.
And Madam President, Ms. Yara, I do think it's important to put in there that funds for APD, it's in the explanation, but if we can bump that up to the actual amendment, it would say funds for APD stations would be used based on need, or would be prioritized based on need.
Okay, we have 2 counselors in the queue. Counselor Bassan, they might have some questions for you. Counselor Benton and Counselor Pena. And I thought Counselor Jones, did you have your hand up too? No.
Finished. It was answered. Thank you.
Counselor Benton and Counselor Pena.
Thank you. Quickly, Madam President. So I feel like somehow that I'm out in front of my hood on this one or something. They started with this request for the main headquarters. It was totally ill-defined. Nothing had been designed. I don't know how much has been designed or analyzed with any of the other commands for that matter. I know they all have needs, and I can be supportive of putting something in there to kind of take care of the emergency needs of every one of the command offices. But that's what I feel like is lacking. I mean, how does APD determine their capital needs? Do they work with DMD on it, or are they just completely on their own? I have a question for administration.
Madam President.
Mr. Rael.
Madam President and councilors, first and foremost, we have the police department that would love to describe to you what conditions exist at APD Maine as we currently know them. And would love to give them an opportunity to share some of that with you. But to answer your question directly, Councilor Benton, the Department of Municipal Development did an analysis of that facility and gave us a report that talked about the need to upgrade many of these computer systems, the facility itself, the mechanical systems. It's an old facility that has a lot of wear and tear, and we have a report that I believe we shared a couple of pages with you here recently, but we have a complete report that was done for us on the entire facility. But if you would indulge the administration, I think the police chief or his staff would like to address the concerns that they have And then I may add one more point, if you don't mind. The flexibility of taking the word main out is not as challenging of an issue. However, just the discussion that you all are having is then becomes which substation do we prioritize over the others? Look, we know we'll get an opportunity to get additional funds down the road to fix some of the substations. And we will always err on the side of making sure the substations are working appropriately with any major issues that come up, such as computer systems, roofs, etc. So there's just not enough money to do them all at one time. But if you wouldn't mind, if I would at least let the police department maybe address some of the concerns that you all have expressed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Royale. I would like to move on to either the chief or one of the officers that can address this issue.
Madam President, members of council, this is Chief Medina. One of the things we need is we need to upgrade the main. The main is a building that's over 50 years old. There's a new side, there's an old side. Right now, we've outgrown the old side. If anybody's up for a tour, we could take you and give you a tour of the inside of the facility, and I think most people would be shocked at the condition of some of the parts of the old main and the conditions that some of our detectives working there are subject to. There's a lot of renovations that need to be done to the old part. We're well aware of where we want to invest this money. And if you're asking the chief of police, the deputy chiefs, and everybody who works at APD what is needed by APD, APD is saying we need to fix the main. There's a vast majority of our people are housed out of there for a lot of reasons right now, especially with the consent decree and the detectives that are working force investigations. It's a consistent moving of resources and trying to figure out where we're going to put individuals, trying to fix up offices. We literally went to, at one point in time, and got leftover furniture from a bank that gave it to us. So we have, we should have Detective Burton on the main line. Let me see if we could get him on, and he can explain it a little bit more. But the leadership of the police department is steadfast that we have to upgrade the main and improve the facilities there as our number one priority. James, are you there?
I'm there, sir. So again, I'm Detective James Burton. I'm the facility manager for APD. So to answer a couple of the questions, specifically the main, again, to put into Councilor Benton's remarks, we are currently working on doing some assessments for all of our facilities. However, as of right now, the one assessment that we have done has been for the main. We had walkthroughs today with Stacy Herrera, as well as administration from the department, as well as some architects to start looking through different problems that we have in the building to start doing some assessments. We have just to name a couple of the problems, we have a 20-year-old plus HVAC system that has been long overdue for an overhaul. We've recently done some lighting improvements, but we have an entire other side of the building that still has lighting issues, heating issues. We have electrical issues. Part of our lighting project was to clean up some of that. The DTI system is out of date, as well as just physical things such as our ceiling grid is dated and antiquated, causing ceiling tiles to fall down out of the ceiling onto desks and people. We also have issues with some of our tiling that's going to have to be renovated and removed if we start doing some of these renovations. So I don't want to bore the council with tons of problems, but the main has many, many issues over years and years of just trying to band-aid different problems. But to address the councilor's issues about other substations, we are in the process of doing similar assessments to the entire department, just to ensure that we are looking at all of the individual needs of every single area.
Thank you, sir. We have some more questions. We have 5 counselors in the queue, Councillor Bassan. So if you please, I'd like to move on to Councillor Pena, Councillor Jones, and Councillor Benton, Councillor Davis, and then we will go back to Councillor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam President. I was just going to say that with the added language, I don't think I could support the amendment. I just want to say that, you know, some of the criticism from the original bill that I had put forward was that there was no assessment for the roof, and hence why I wanted to kind of put it off until the next ARPA so that the assessment can be done. It seems as though APD has done an assessment on this, and those improvements are needed at the main. So I can't support the added language, just the removal of the main. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pena. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm listening to this and I'm realizing why maybe 6 years ago we attempted to develop a maintenance department, a facilities maintenance department for the city of Albuquerque, which never was brought to light. And the reason being, you police officers are wonderful, wonderful people, and you are great police officers. You are not building maintenance people, or our buildings wouldn't be in the shape they're in. No offense intended, but that's the way it is. We do now have the startup, as I understand, if Mr. Ryle wants to respond to this, of a maintenance facilities, a facilities maintenance kind of department with some really super sharp people in it. This is not a problem that can be solved in APD by doing the main alone. In the years that I've been in council, we have worked diligently to upgrade and make the command areas that service District 8 livable. The conditions that these officers have had to serve under are deplorable. The bathrooms are awful. The roofs are falling in. There's water leaks everywhere. We do not, let's face it, guys, we do not take care of our facilities. And Mr. Ryle, we understand that that doesn't mean just APD. But I believe that the issue here should be, before we allocate however many $1 million, that we should have a true, actual assessment of what's needed. Piecemeal is no way to fix properties in this condition. Should Maine be first? Maybe. But if we don't have the money to do it, it doesn't matter where it sits in line if we can't do it. This isn't something that we just do because we think we're going to have some extra money in the budget. I would support the intent of this. I do not support how it's brought forward. I think we need to do a real plan on all APD facilities to see what we really need. And it's not just you guys. Fire has been in buildings that are freaking falling down around them. We don't look at this. We always do the sexy, fun things that we can do a press conference on. That is not what we should be doing as stewards of the taxpayers' money. We need to take care of our physical facilities, and we're not doing it. Let's look at City Hall, for heaven's sakes. I mean, it's been antiquated for way too long. So I don't support this, but I would support a way and a plan to get it started so that we can start working on these. Do I support fixing the stuff that are a health hazard? Mold being number one? Yes. But not to put this kind of money in something that we really don't have a professional's opinion. If we had an engineer look at it, if we had multiple engineers, if we had an architect, do we know the condition of the roof? Do we know the true condition of what's it going to cost? How do we do it? What order do we do it in? Do we go through and fix something, but then something that would then not, we would be messing with when we did the whole thing? I don't think we can ever afford to do the whole thing all at once, but we can do it by steps and do it correctly. I don't think we do that with any of our physical facilities. So I can't support this, not because I don't want to get it fixed, but because I think just putting a couple $1 million in a pot does not mean it's going to be done in a timely manner nor correctly. If we don't do it timely, correctly, timely, in that order, we'll be throwing away some money. Thank you, Madam President, for that opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Councillor Jones.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Councilor Jones?
You're going to have an opportunity. There's 3 other councilors waiting. Councilor.
Well, and I'm happy to wait, Madam President, but I think what I have to say might actually expedite this. So it's at the will of the council if you want me to wait.
Go ahead, Councilor Bassan, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you. So I think given the discussions that we have, the concerns that we have, it sounds like we're all relatively on the same page with this. So what I would really hope that we could consider in the further discussions that we're about to have is strike the word main and add in to complete an assessment of all of the substations and the main station and figure out from an outside professional what is needed where as far as in particular building maintenance and not just cosmetic upgrades.
Madam President, may I just comment on that very quickly?
Councilor Bassan, was that an amendment, or are you considering a different amendment? Or
well, Madam President, we've been talking about how to change up my current amendment, and that's what this whole discussion has been about. So rather than continuing with kind of all of the various suggestions for the sake of time, I think if someone else wants to do another amendment, but I'm willing to move my amendment saying strike the word main and make sure to include that an outside agency does a complete assessment on all of the police buildings, including the substation. And because I know there's been one at the main, to Councilor Jones's point, where is all of the who, what, when, where, why, and how of these other stations? We don't know what is in the most dire need. Because as we heard from APD just now, what we need at the main station sounds pretty awful. And like, we better fix that building that we own. What if there's...
Bassan, can we hear from the other 3 councilors? Because they still have their hands up.
Madam President, can I please finish? It's just to say that if the main station is in such dire need, what if some of our substations are even in worse need? Thank you.
Would you like to maybe draft another version of your amendment while we hear from the other councilors?
No, ma'am, that was it. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Benton.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Councilor Bassan, for bringing this forward and at least having us think about this. I also am very sympathetic to the argument made by Councilor Jones. I guess I'll go back to the mayor's conference room. Was there a complete architect engineer analysis of Maine of what's needed there? Or are we just picking a number out of the hat?
Madam President and Councilor Benton, the Municipal Development Department did a thorough review of the facility. They walked through it with our folks in DMD that do the architectural work for all your projects, also with folks from IT who do all the work connecting all these departments on the same communication systems, and reviewed the entire facility and created a pretty thick document that we can send to you all that talks about all the shortcomings of that facility. I would rest assured to all of you that we didn't just pick this number out of the air and decide just to put it all in one building had we not done some assessment of the issues that we have to fix in that building. It is one of the oldest buildings, and Mr. Montoya is here as well. If you'd like to hear from him, he can give you more detailed information on their work as they prepared this report for our consideration and funding.
Madam President, if I could, Mr. Rael, I appreciate that DMD took a look at this. This is a building. This is like an architectural and engineering, mechanical engineering, of which to my knowledge, we have none in that department. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm asking you whether we got a professional opinion from design engineers and architects about this project. And so I appreciate that DMD looked at it. I'm not necessarily, and of course I haven't seen the report. when we're putting 5 million in front of the council, you know, I'm sorry that I never saw this or it never crossed my desk or whatever. Maybe it's my fault, but we should not be asked to put 5 million into a department that is being funded to the hilt. And with the cooperation and agreement of our citizens, we're doing it too, and ourselves too. And I don't at all deny that the people who work in that building, as do the people that work in other buildings, think that their building needs work. And I'm not even denying this, but my problem is the figure that's being put to it. And I think we ought to be more methodical along the lines of what Councilor Jones is talking about, you know, whether it's that department or some methodology at least, as opposed to just, okay, we got 5 million and we'll add some language and then we'll see what happens. So I also must say, and maybe I should ask the department or somebody, why is a sworn officer the facility management of APD? I want that sworn officer working out here on the beat in front of my house. You know, I don't understand the rationale that a sworn officer is a facilities manager of APD.
No,
Thank you, Councilor.
Madam President and Councilor Benton, Mr. Montoya is here. He can answer some of your questions in terms of the professional assessment of the facility that was done, and the other issue associated with the officer is a personnel issue that we can talk. You can talk with the chief about if you wouldn't, as it relates to his role and his assignment.
Madam President, you can't start with that. I'd rather hear that than what Mr. Montoya. I mean, I don't deny that Mr. Montoya and his department tried their best, but they're not in the business of cost control, in my humble opinion. That's the responsibility of the design professionals.
Thank you, Councilor Benton. We still have Councilor Sena. Let's see, Councilor Davis, Councilor Sena, Councilor Harris, and then now back to Councilor Jones. So we'll.
And Madam President, I had a question too.
Oh, okay.
About the sworn officer being in charge of, and no insult on him either. Don't get me wrong, but why is a sworn officer a facilities manager?
We can go to the chief on that if you'd like.
Madam President, Councilor Benton, this officer is part of our ops review section, and it's a section that we're currently working on to make some changes in the amount of people that we have in sworn positions that are not, that could be covered by civilians. So it is a process that we're working on. It's going to take us time to filter out. We're also working on the individuals who manage our fleet and making some changes there because over the past probably 6 years, that individual also was a sworn person. So we're working on it, and as soon as we're able to, we're doing everything we can to get sworn people out where they can be working a sworn function.
Thank you, Chief. That's all I really needed. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Benton. So we will move on to Councilor Davis, Councilor Sena, and Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate it. I realize where we are, and I'll try to keep this very brief. And thank you, Chief, for that explanation. I appreciate it. It's been since I've been on the City Council now 6 years, I think. In every budget cycle, we've asked for a list of sworn positions that could be filled by civilians at APD, and you and I have had a chance to talk about that in person. And I appreciate that for the first time since I've been here, we have a police chief that's committed to being sure that if we do all the investment and the time and the training and the range and all those extra things, the folks that are eligible to qualify to that very highest standard to be a police officer in our city are serving our citizens with their criminal justice needs and not with these other duties. And so I appreciate that and look forward to hearing how that works. Let me just, I appreciate that. And Mr. Real and maybe Mr. Montoya, you can help me. Mr. Montoya, when did your department complete a review of the APD main? I have gotten a black and white copy of it sent to me middle of this meeting today. but it looks like a piece of a larger report, and I'm not sure when this was done.
Madam President and Councilor Davis, the report that we are more than happy to share with you is roughly 34 pages. It was conducted in 2018, and it reflects a 5-year forecast and a forecast through 2029. So the report reflects what it would have cost to do all of the upgrades. And what I believe was provided to you was on page 10, that basically categorizes what sort of upgrades would need to be done immediately in order to bring that building up to standards. We then looked at the cost in 2018 when the report was completed, and then those costs in 2023, if in fact funding became available and we were needing to make those improvements. And the figure that you have on page 9 is the most accurate figure that we have. That includes inflation and projected costs moving out to 2023. So the number is a number that was arrived at by a company that did the assessment for us. I know Councilor Benton may be familiar with them, but Dude Solutions, Alpha Facility Solutions. So it was a company that had both engineering and architectural components to it.
Thank you, Madam President and Director Montoya. I appreciate that very much, but I think that's kind of I appreciate that because it helps to make my point. I want to be really clear. If this is a priority of the administration and of APD for 10% of the new federal dollars, but it wasn't significant enough to raise to a priority during the whole CIP process, and this is a need that's been known since 2018, the City Council got a copy of this report at 4:43 this afternoon, an hour and 43 minutes into this meeting, to justify this expenditure after councilors started making this request. But I know that Councilor Senna, Councilor Benton, and I were on a meeting with the administration in March about their proposed plan for how to spend the federal dollars, and we requested meetings about what your priorities would be to give us background and to give us more information. And these amendments have been available for weeks about why we wanted to do this, and suddenly this is APD's #1 priority. It frustrates me in our process because I want us to have the best facilities for our officers to do their job, but the administration doesn't act like this matters. They act like we're just going to approve this because you asked for it and have known this as a priority for all these years. And suddenly we want to make a change, and it's worth a 45-minute conversation and a lot of pushback from the administration when you weren't even willing to give us the data or information before the meeting started or a month ago. That's what frustrates me about this process. And it makes me feel like it's not a priority, that it's just a way to spend money. And that's what's frustrating. And I'm willing to say that we should not spend this money on this project because it hasn't been a priority, and it wasn't for 3 budget cycles plus this one. And quite frankly, my other point here is I am very impressed with our new chief and his leadership team. Many of them I've worked with for years and I'm impressed with. But quite frankly, I'm uninclined to reward APD with new toys and new facilities until they get their act together and can start demonstrating significantly forward progress on compliance. Because what I've also heard from this department is that we really need a state-of-the-art center for investigators and crime labs and everybody else to be in one location at one time under one roof and not have them scattered all over the city or in old facilities. And that's a competing priority and request that we've heard for years. So I'm not sure what APD's long-term vision is about using the main, about using their other facilities. I would support a long-term plan, but I also think it depends on what our long-term staffing plan is, because the number of persons we've had in all of these positions has changed over the years. And so for that reason, I would support at this point using that money for other more urgent priorities until we can develop a more comprehensive and cohesive strategy. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Davis. We will move on to Councilor Senna and then Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. I think my question I'm hoping it will help this conversation because, the American Rescue Plan Act is $1.9 trillion. And of that, $10 billion was also set aside for capital projects. I know that, we are limited in our pot of money for municipalities. And so if, say we have the funding here, whether it's, discussion of the council to pass it or not, or use it for other ways, is there additional funds that we can access to address some of these concerns, to address some of this infrastructure need? Because we're seeing it across the nation. It's not limited to Albuquerque. And I know that many of these building projects were set aside, and it's just getting worse just because we're trying to really meet the need of community and prioritizing them. So I know that this has come up along with some other improvements because of this additional funds. But I'm just curious whether, I don't know if the administration can answer this, but have you all looked at the capital projects fund, the $10 billion or other pockets or pots of money that was included in the $1.9 trillion?
Who would you like to have answer that, Councilor
President Borrego and Councilor Sena? We're looking at each one of those pots of money as the federal regulations come out that detail what it's for. Also, of course, as you sat on the intergovernmental committee or whatever that one is, we looked at this all the federal priorities as well, and we're looking at the earmarks. So, I mean, I think the long story short is we will always be evaluating all of those sources for any projects that aren't funded in our other cycles.
Madam President, if I can follow up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because we have a few infrastructure improvements and building improvements here, I just really hope that we can continue to search for those funds. This is one thing that I agree, and even between committees, we were trying to evaluate that there is lots of pots of money that are discussed in ARPA. So, if it does not occur through the discussion of the council, I hope that we can continue to look for it because, hearing the needs, whether it's the substation or the main, that will continue to work for our community, and also think of other needs that need to be addressed as well. So I just want to say thank you. I know that we're not getting this exact report and just having this discussion, but again, our buildings, it's something that the nation is seeing across the board, not just in buildings, but in our road systems as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sena. We will move to Councilor Jones and then Councilor Pena.
Thank you, Madam President. I think we've probably beaten it almost to death, but I still believe there's a way to fix this, and there is nothing wrong with doing this in stages as long as we know what those stages are and what the costs are. But I think probably we've gone after this because there's a big pot of money and we want it, but perhaps that isn't the best use of it. Let's take a look at all of our stations, because even if we appropriate this money, if we don't already have plans and assessments and gone in for permits, because yes, the city does have to permit, and all of those things, there's no big rush on this. I don't see a rush. I think we need to do it correctly, and we need to do it correctly across the city. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Jones. Councilor Pena?
Thank you, Madam President. Again, as Councilor Jones stated, I think we're beating this one down, but I just want to say that I appreciate Councilor Bassan and her attempt to try to accommodate some other councilors' comments as she's providing her amendment. So her amendment stated that this is actually just a removing the word main, which gave some flexibility to be able to address those needs. In her attempt to try to accommodate other councilors in their comments, I think it's muddied the water a little bit. So, I would just, hope that Councilor Bassan would just move forward with her original amendment, which I intend to support. And when we're talking about projects and lots of projects, I mean, we had the art project that didn't have a lot of planning associated with it. We had, we're talking about the roof. We're going to put a lot of money into the roof at the convention center, and there hasn't been an assessment done. This money is an opportunity for the city to identify those projects that we've put off and put off and put off, to try to help with economic vitality in our community. And I think that as we do this, I know it becomes difficult. And part of the reason that I didn't add projects from just singular council districts is because I really believe that this package really had almost everything aside from the police vehicles, but it really had a lot of things that were going to help to promote our city, because next year or the year after, when we don't have this money, then these projects that we're talking about are going to continue to be on the back burner. So I'll just end there, and thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Pena. And Councilor Bassan, since you haven't been able to weigh in on this, I truly believe that all of our areas probably have significant needs. And I'm just going to give you an example. In the Northwest Area Command, which was built probably, it was before I retired, which was about 2008, is one of the back walls is actually cracking pretty severely. So there are definitely needs throughout the city. And I'm glad that you brought this to light, because we had this discussion, and it was a discussion that needed to be had. Downtown is a very, very old building and has had few renovations for years. I mean, and it's the main location of our police department. So there are definitely, looking at, and I'm not a building maintenance person or anything, but just knowing the old City Hall, which is part of the police station underground, probably has never been, I don't know when the last time it was ever renovated. And I know that it wasn't renovated when I was working at Plaza del Sol. And I worked there for many, many years, for at least 10 years or longer, probably more like 15 years. It just never, there was never any. So I wonder, when I think about what Councilor Jones was talking about, prioritization, I mean, it absolutely is something that needs to happen. So thank you. I'm going to defer back to Councilor Bassan and let her close.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. I'm really hoping that we can get to the close. First, let me just say, this was never my intention. I would have bet you $1,000 at the beginning of this meeting we wouldn't have spent this much time talking on this amendment. But I've been working with council staff, and since we've been talking for a little while about it, I would like them to please share my same amendment with the one addition that I would like to have us vote on, if possible.
We are going to put that on a screen share for you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Hang on a second.
I was just intending to hopefully have a little more flexibility, with the understanding that maybe it would or would not have all gotten used at the main station, but I liked the idea of flexibility. So that was what started this whole amendment. But I still want to strike the word main. And then on page 3, after line 16, insert a new paragraph. Prior to the expenditure of this appropriation, the city shall conduct an outside needs assessment of all APD stations. This assessment must include an evaluation of existing facility needs as distinct from cosmetic upgrades. And I would hope that I can urge your support and use that as my close.
Okay, Councilors. So what Councilor Bassan has done is she has amended floor amendment number 2. And so we will vote on floor amendment number 2 as amended. Councilor Bassan, I propose that you're moving this in place.
Yes, it's adding the extra, it's the same amendment that I was originally moving, but now through our discussions and council staff has clarified that this is following all the rules and is acceptable since we hadn't moved and voted, we hadn't voted on my original amendment. This is that same amendment plus a section 2.
Okay, so Councilor Jones, do you still propose a second for this?
Yes, I second this.
Thank you.
As amended.
So we have a motion and a second on floor amendment number 2 as amended by Councilor Swan.
Madam President,
Yes, Mr. Ray.
if you don't mind, part of the interruption. As the amendment is written, we have a question for clarification. In order to do the assessment, we'd like to use a portion of the funding to help us in the assessment. If you read the amendment literally, it does not permit us to use these funds to